Welcome back. We're in a bit of a different setting today in the fab area. We're going to be working on the transmission slash diff. It's all in one because it's a transaxle. I think the way we're going to go about it is split the transmission into 3 different parts and just work on one section. We're not rebuilding any of the actual internal components because it's not worth it. I don't need to make heaps of power with this car, so whatever's in there is in there, and unless something breaks when we're driving it. So we're just going to be cleaning everything, making it look brand new from the outside. So we'll get started. We'll take all the external bits off, put them in some blue tubs, and then move on. That was a struggle. So after like 3 rounded D10s or whatever you want to call it, plugs, these top ones here, because it's so rusty, it finally came off. It took ages. That's the casing. Obviously this is the gearbox, so I'm going to remove as little as possible. Obviously you have to remove the gears to get to the next casing, but I'm not going to crack open the diff because that's way above my pay grade. The reason why I'm doing this is so we can access that to put it into the sandblaster. We're going to have to somehow tape the bearing up and then sandblast it, but yeah, it made a complete mess. Luckily we did take the casing off because the gasket on the transmission is toast, so we're going to have to replace that with some RTV gasket. I've decided against ripping apart the rest of the gearbox. It's not worth it, so what I'm going to do is give it a really good clean and then chuck the whole thing in the sandblaster once I get some new plugs for these sections here that were rusted in. I'll just put the whole thing in the sandblaster and plug up any holes that I think sand will get into, but we definitely have to clean this case properly, so I'm going to tape up the bearing because I'm not going to be able to get it out and sandblast it. Okay, it's now the next day. I've sort of thought about what we're going to do with the gearbox. Now, since we're not changing any of the synchros, it's not really necessary that we need to pull the whole box apart. I just wanted to pull this rear section off like I mentioned because it was actually leaking, so it gives me a chance to redo the gasket. Now I have threaded, or whatever you want to call it, some bolts. So this top one here and this one on the side, they were that rusted. I got it on an impact and it got destroyed straight away. So we're going to have to find a couple more of those. But for now, to put the gearbox in the sandblaster, if it will focus. Now to put the gearbox in the sandblaster, I'm going to put them back in just enough so no sand gets in there. So I'm going to clean that last back section here. Clean that up. I'm going to tape over the bearing obviously and clean out the magnet. The magnet's full of shit pretty much. So I'll clean that out, get it really clean and chuck it in the sandblaster and see how it ends up. If it doesn't look too good, I'm not going to do the whole gearbox. I'll probably just hit it with a wire wheel, but I think anything will be a lot cleaner than what the gearbox is. So I'll get started on that. That's that end cap we're talking about. So give that as much as clean as I can and tape up the bearing on the inside. And that's the magnet in there. She's gone, so clean the magnet up as well and we'll chuck it in the sandblaster. So the sandblaster worked quite well actually. It got rid of 99.9% of the grime and dust that was stuck onto the casing. So then we moved on with the sandblaster and started using a wire wheel to polish the rest up. And it turned out really well, as you'll see in the next clip. So we kept that process going for the rest of the gearbox. It's cleaned up really nicely actually. I've gone over it with a wire wheel on an air tool, so really high RPM, and it's turned really shiny, which is what we're going for anyway, so that's good. I couldn't really get in there, but you won't see it because the gearbox is like that. So yeah, it turned out really nice. I'm going to go clean it now, so I'm going to get some degreaser on it, go over it again just to make sure every bit of grime's out of it. I might see if I've got a wire wheel that will fit in there, but if I don't, I'm not going to bother. So massive difference from where we started, that's for sure. The whole idea of going through multiple steps of cleaning, especially in this transmission, it's because it's cast, right? So within all the little imperfections within the cast, there's grime, dirt, mud, whatever, stuck in between the little pores within the metal. So going through the different steps ensures that we can get as much of it out. That's why I'm cleaning it in sort of different steps and heaps of different times to make sure it's as clean as possible. As you can see, it's not extremely smooth, right, the surface. So if we go over it with just Scotch-Brite, it's not going to get in between the little pores of the metal. Hence why I've gone in the parts cleaner and I'm cleaning it 3 or 4 different times just to get rid of all the little dirt grime stuck between the pores of the cast. So if we didn't do that, it will look really shiny from the outside, but if you have a closer look within the metal, it will still have dirt and stuff. That's why we're going through 3 or 4 different processes to clean it. It's a timely process, but obviously the outcome's worth it. So I've just blown over it once more with a bit of alcohol, and I've just sitting it on the transmission now. You can see the difference on how much nicer that is compared to the rest of the gearbox. So what we're gonna have to do now, because I've shredded some bolts, I'm gonna have to put this back on. I'm gonna button everything back up, not tighten it, not grease it, put the back cap on and start cleaning the rest of the gearbox. I'm gonna get as much as I can off, such as these brackets, and I don't even know what that is, part of the gear shifter. And we're gonna do the same process for the rest of the gearbox, but it's gonna be a lot harder because I'm not gonna split the box, so it's gonna be like that. It should fit in the sandblaster as well. So we'll start on that. I'm gonna button everything back up, tighten everything, plug up all the holes and stuff, and then start cleaning the rest of the gearbox. So this was the hard part, actually cleaning the whole gearbox in the parts cleaner, obviously because it's a lot bigger, it was way more dirty and it was heavier, so there was a lot more hard to reach areas on the gearbox that made it take a while to clean. We used the parts cleaner just to get rid of the initial grime and dirt on the box. With cleaning the transmission in the parts cleaner, it made a mess. It didn't really do much, so I brought it outside here. I've got the air gun on it just to clean it up, and I think I'm just going to get the wire wheel straight onto it just to get all the, I guess, mud and oil and stuff that's still on the gearbox and transmission. I'll get as much of that grime off as I can with that wire wheel on the air tool, and then I'll see if I can put it in the sandblaster. I don't want to put it in just yet because it's still got too much stuff on there and I don't want to clog up the sandblaster, so it's not worth it. So I'll get started on that and I'll see how it goes. That's the side I've completed. There's still a fair bit of sand I'll have to blow out, but as you can see, it's a massive difference from where it was sort of 20-25 minutes ago. Okay, so I've just finished up the gearbox in the sandblaster for its first sort of run in there. It's turned out really nicely. So okay, so I'm going to go over it again with the air tool, again just getting as much stuff as I can off, and then probably put it back into the sandblaster for one last cleaning. Go over it again with the parts cleaner. So again, we're going over multiple steps to get as much of the stuff off as possible, all the grime. But yeah, all the rust is off that second bit now as well. So with the wire wheel, it's going to make it shiny like the rest of the end cap there. So it's now the next day. I went past the tool shop and managed to get some small wire brushes, whatever you want to call it, end brush, that's what the packet says, just to get into the nooks and crannies. So hopefully that works. I've also got some rust removal spray, which I'm going to spray this middle part of the gearbox with now and let that sit for a bit. I managed to get as much as I can off with the sandblaster, but as you can see in the pits and stuff, you can't really get to it. So I'll clean that up and see if I can get in the corners with the small wire brush. And then hopefully I can happily say the gearbox is done until we get some more spare parts for it that I broke and some other rusted out bolts and stuff I want to change. So I put the really small bit on and it has worked amazingly, if that's even a word. As you can see, it's cleaned up all the crevices, so I'm going to keep going on with the gearbox and keep cleaning all the little bits I couldn't get to with the sandblaster / bigger wire wheel I was using. So keep continuing with that. It took like 5 minutes, which is awesome, so it's really worked well, worked for its purpose. So I'll keep going with that. It looks like the rust is slowly coming off, so I'm going to give it another coating now with the spray. You can really see the difference. I'm not sure why it rusted so much, but obviously it needs a much better cleaning than the other part. So I got the wire wheel out again. This is the other side of the gearbox, and just started grinding away the rest of the mud and grime that was stuck in between the crevices. It took forever. It was quite thick in the hard to reach spots near the axle, so I'm actually guessing the CV boots exploded and thrown grease everywhere, and the previous owner hasn't cleaned it, so it took a while to clean, but again, the end result was so worth it. Okay, it's now the next day. I've sort of sat down and thought about what we're doing with the whole gearbox situation. I've gone through this extent of like pretty much making it look brand new, and I haven't really done anything on the inside such as replacing the synchros. So I'm going to go ahead and order some new synchros. Obviously need to get some new gaskets and some more hardware for the gearbox because it's rusted. So further down the track when we get those bits, we'll do a quick episode on rebuilding the gearbox. It won't take too long. But yeah, at least it's now clean, so when we do go and rebuild it, I'm not going to get all dirty, and it's not going to be a pain in the ass. The gearbox looks brand new, so we've obviously come a long way. I know it's not a super fun video, but at least now you guys know how to clean a gearbox. You don't need to put it in the sandblaster, so the wire wheel works just as well. Best thing I can suggest is getting some of these bad boys, some rust cleaner, and one of these, I'm not too sure what it's called, but it helped polish the end result up a lot nicer than the wire wheels. Next week we're going to be working on the rear end and the torsion bar, sort of the rear suspension geometry, whatever you want to call it. And what we're going to have to do is make a little spray booth outside. So I'll head to Target and go get some some random tables and stuff to put outside and make a little DIY spray paint booth. We're going to need to spray paint a bunch of stuff down in the future anyway, so it's going to become really handy having our own little booth that's covered from the elements. Again, thanks for watching. I know it wasn't an awesome episode. It was probably satisfying on your end. It took me forever and I made a mess in the process, but at least you guys know how to sort of clean gearboxes and what to expect from it, especially all that grime. It definitely makes a mess. But anyway, next week it's going to be good. We'll be rebuilding the rear end like I mentioned, so a bit more fun, a bit more DIY stuff with the paint and all that. So thanks everyone for watching once again. Really appreciate it. Appreciate all the kind comments and messages. It's been good. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.